Charles, perfect timing. We are joined today by the lovely Judge Jeanine Pirro. Hello, Charles. Hello, Judge Jeanine. How is everybody doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Very well, thanks. Saw your impressive interview with the president and have read your wonderful latest book. Do you ever get any free time?
No, in fact, somebody asked me. I did a Skype yesterday, the Rubin Report with Dave Rubin. He said, "What do you do for fun?" I didn't know what to say.
Well, are they paying you
That's
triple?
a bad one.
Are they paying you triple overtime at Fox?
No, God, no, not a chance.
Anyway,
how are you guys doing?
We're doing very well, thanks.
Doing great.
Jason?
Yeah, very, very well, Judge Jeanine. Thank you for joining us today. And your timing is impeccable. You've arrived just at the start moment, and everyone is really interested in the new book, Don't Lie to Me. Can you tell us all about it?
Well, Don't Lie to Me has its genesis, I guess, way back when I used to be a judge, and I'd sit on the bench and look at a defendant and get fired up and tell him to stop lying to me. Or if I turned to the left in the witness well, and I would say to the witness to my left, don't lie to me. It's always been one of those things that aggravates me when people don't tell the truth. And I think that in politics, we all tolerate a certain amount of lying from politicians. In fact, we expect it. But what's going on in America today with the left and the lies is just beyond the pale. So I wrote the book, Don't Lie to Me, and I identify some of the lies that have been so much a part of American history since Donald Trump was elected. And most of them covered in other books, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, and Radicals, Resistance, and Revenge. But the lies on the pandemic, the lies about, Black Lives Matter, and the lies about the economy, everything that's being said now is really a lie. And it's so blatant, guys, that it's like the left is saying, you know what, just don't believe your lying eyes. If you see something that's a murder, it's not really a murder. It's probably a justified killing. So
Mercy killing.
I decided that, especially with the pandemic, when Joe Biden, he comes out in April 12th to be exact, and he says, I'm going to tell everybody how to deal with the pandemic. And even the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal said, hey, Joe, you didn't tell us anything that we didn't already know, and that's already being done by Donald Trump. But, it's all the lies that they continue to proliferate, and, some people are buying them. And I like to put truth to the darkness and truth to the lies, and that's why I wrote the book.
It's a great read, Judge. I mean, would you be, I'm trying to get Jason to do this. I don't know if he'll do this, but I think it'd be hilarious to pick a person, put one of those face masks on, and put all lies matter. And the question is, who should that person be? we could consider putting you up.
All lies matter. And you know what? The sad part, though, is that, as people get ready to vote in what is it, 47 days now, or whatever the number is, I worry about this country. I worry about the fact that you've got Kamala Harris talking about the Harris administration. A day later, Joe Biden talks about the Harris administration. I mean, you have to wonder what's being said behind closed doors that they're so comfortable with that term. I mean, who would even think in those terms? What wool are they pulling over our eyes? And we all know that Joe doesn't have the capacity to be president. He doesn't have the energy. He's in his bunker for like 3 days in a row, and he might come out for a minute, not ask any questions. He reads from a teleprompter. He's always looking down, reading answers. I mean, he even said, move it up to get the answers. I mean, this is pathetic. It's almost like Donna Brazile. Remember when she gave the questions to Hillary Clinton? I mean, the left is comfortable with this kind of stuff, and I think it's disgusting. I really do. And my fear is that as we've got these protests and the looting and the burning and the lack of prosecution of these cases, police being defunded, told to stand down, Kamala Harris says she doesn't think the Constitution prevents her from confiscating our guns. Beto O'Rourke is going to be the policymaker about guns if Joe Biden wins. I mean, AOC is going to be their energy coordinator. I mean,
Wow.
we're going to hell in a handbasket real fast. And it's the same road that Venezuela took once, a very rich, oil-rich country. And, now women are giving birth on the side of the road, and they're eating zoo animals. I mean, it's disgusting. And I fear
Judge,
for my country.
we do have a little bit of good news. The American Society of Quartermasters has come forward and endorsed Joe Biden.
Who are
I'm sure you
they?
heard. Well, you heard his comment about the ladies' department. If you're a quartermaster, you know the thing.
The thing. Oh, of course. Yes, the thing. I got it.
He melted down recently. So in your book, you talk about, we like to call it the plandemic, or the scamdemic. But Judge, I'm a numbers person, and when I first heard about this model that was going to tell us that we had to destroy the American economy, I instantly recoiled, because I'm well aware no forecast is perfect. We can't even predict the weather. The best weather forecaster can't do a good job tomorrow. So when you do these elaborate models with a new disease, I was instantly very suspicious about the numbers and very suspicious about the extreme measures that have been taken. Now, maybe they saved lives, maybe they didn't, but one thing is certain: the media hysteria and this reliance on Fauci and Birx and other people who have never diagnosed you or Jason or me or anybody to now make a prescription for 7.5 billion people in the world. And then when they miss the model, as you point out, Neil Ferguson completely misses the model, there's no retribution. Or will there be?
Nope. And not only is there no retribution, I mean, there's no consequence. And the thought that Neil Ferguson had them killing all the sheep and the cows in the UK, and they still listen to him. I mean, that's the incredible part. They're still listening to this bozo. And then the CDC, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, said, "Hey, everybody, only 6% of the 180 plus thousand who died of COVID alone. Everybody else had something else cooking." I mean, I have a girlfriend who said, that her husband was in the hospital dying. He had heart issues. And, they right in the end, they slapped COVID on it. She said, "I was with my husband for a week. He didn't have COVID. He had a heart problem." Wow. And, then the hospital gets more money. She has to spend another $20,000 to hermetically seal the coffin. I mean, it's business. And the sad part about it is, they think that we're stupid. They lock us down. And then, they tell the protesters, "Have at it. This is your time in history. Go protest in the tens of thousands and don't worry about it. But the rest of you, don't you dare go to church. Don't you dare go to synagogue. And don't you dare go to work. We'll take away your license and we'll put you in jail." I mean, these are small-time politicians looking to exercise their political muscles. Shame on them. And shame on de Blasio and Cuomo and the rest of them. I could go on, but you asked the question.
Well, yeah. No, you have gone on and on eloquently in the book. One of the things Judge, because you helped me so much expose the Clinton Foundation, is that when you talk about a foundation, it actually has to be an organization. From a legal standpoint, it has to have articles of incorporation if it's a corporation, and bylaws. And there is not a single Black Lives Matter organization that is technically an organization, especially including the ones that Hawk Newsom runs here in New York. In theory, runs. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand why our IRS and FBI and Justice Department are jumping all over the people who purport to run these fake charities. And then on top of that, Act Blue, which you mentioned and discussed, and Thousand Currents, who until recently had a vice chairman who was a convicted terrorist.
Yep. It's frightening. It is the complicity of the media along with the left that covers so much of this. And, Charles, I get very upset because, as you know, I've been a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA and all that, for over 3 decades. And I say to myself, I don't want to lose faith in the criminal justice system. I mean, I understand when they defund police, when they say no cash bail, or they call it bail reform, but it's no cash bail. And then they have prosecutors who are funded by socialists who want to let everybody out of jail. I get that. But when we have the ability and the laws in place and we don't use them for people like the Clinton Foundation, that's violated the law, I mean, it's very frustrating. And then, when you've got people like Nancy Pelosi, who on a day when people should be dancing with the Abraham Accords with Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, and even Kosovo and
Serbia.
She says it's a distraction from COVID because the numbers are going up. Well, first of all, the numbers aren't going up. And how dare you? How dare you call peace in the Middle East a distraction? These people are so desperate for power that they'll lie, they'll say anything. And the last thing that people are doing now is following the law. And I worry about the justice system. I worry about people on the right not having the fire in their pit to try to fight the obvious illegalities that are going on the left. It's very frustrating.
Well, you know Donald Trump very well, I believe decades, and your friends, and obviously this book is dedicated to him, and as it rightly should be. How does a person of his age and his wealth, with his extended family, and all of the things that he's done that he could rest his laurels on, how does a person like Donald Trump get up every morning, pulling the arrows out of the front and his back that come from friends and enemies alike, and suit up probably at 3 o'clock in the morning to begin his day and keep doing this? I mean, it's just remarkable.
Well, you're right. It is remarkable, and he's always been a remarkable human being. I mean, he's one of the people who could go into the lion's den and come out with his tie straight. Donald Trump loves a fight. He just does, and it's what motivates him, and it's what keeps him going. And I don't think he ever expected that being president would be as difficult. And it's been more difficult on him than any other president in history. Every day there's an attack. Every day they go after his family. But, he's determined, and he loves this country, and he loves he understands the severity of the situation that we're in. And at the end of the day, I think that, he is determined to fight to the end. He's the only thing, Charles, between us and barbarism, between the Black Lives Matter, and not the movement, but the organization, but that's not really, as you point out, an organization, where they come up and they take your drinks from your table and they eat your food until you make a fist for Black Lives Matter, and they burn the courthouses, and they shutter the businesses, and they loot and they steal, and there are no consequences. Right. I mean, we can't have this, and that's why I wrote Don't Lie to Me. I think it's important for people to understand that, what they're selling is just a bunch of lies, and the people have to recognize that we're not going to be able to live free the way we're accustomed to. This lockdown is nothing new. Just lock them down and open the borders and take away their guns and, defund the police. That's their mantra. And that's what they want to do. And Joe Biden is not strong enough to be president of the United States. I mean, can you imagine him matching wits with Kim Jong-un or Xi Jinping or Putin, Vladimir Putin? Not a chance.
I can't
even come out.
I can't imagine him reheating a slice of pizza in the oven and bringing it out to me and collecting $1. I mean, one of the things you do touch on, and I really want to thank you for this, because I knew about the incident, but I couldn't remember when exactly or where it happened. At the closing statement of your book, you discuss Abraham Lincoln's prescient remark in 1838 in Springfield, Illinois, in essence, that the greatest threat to America will come from within. And you're absolutely, he was right, and I love the fact that you brought attention back into it. But the problem that we have, and you touch on it in the book, and the president, rightfully, in rolling back this critical race theory garbage that has been promoted throughout government, I think is beginning to focus on the pressing need to reform our educational system. For example, why should law schools and business schools, and for that matter, medical schools that churn out people who make a tremendous amount of money in businesses, that give them a professional credential, why should that be a charity? Why should that get a tax deduction? Why should Harvard and Yale and all these other rich schools with big endowments indoctrinate these kids, these impressionable kids, with propaganda, who then, using their trust funds, many of them, go around to these BLM rallies and burn down inner city neighborhoods in the name of injustice. Right. I mean, we need to have, I think, a hook and branch restructuring of the educational system, the delivery system, the rating for educational institutions. And I have a suggestion of somebody who could do that for us, and that's Rick Grinnell. You know, I think.
Oh,
Rick,
interesting. Why Rick? Why Rick?
Because it was amazing watching. I love the way he goes over to Germany, and the entire swamp says, you know, oh, you better not insult Angela Merkel and talk about busting up the EU. So the first thing he does is he tells Angela Merkel to pay her bills and says he wants to bust up the EU. I mean, it's really a tour de force performance. Yeah. And then he goes from that to declassifying his acting DNI. He's a very smart guy. Yeah. And I think, I don't know him at all, but I would guess just from watching him that he certainly has the firepower to consider how to do this responsibly. And man, oh man, you reform charities and educational institutions, you're going to collect maybe trillions of dollars in fines and penalties. You're going to change the way in which our kids are taught, and you're going to root out the cancer that you address, that we turn our kids over to these schools. I remember, in my own case, I sent my kids to the best private schools, but I would go to these parent-teacher conferences, and I would look at the drawings, you know, Columbus murdered American Indians, this kind of, what kind of garbage are you teaching in this expensive private school that I'm paying for?
Yes. You know, wow. Charles, it's great. I was mesmerized as you were talking. That is brilliant. And what I'd like to do is, you know, I'd like to talk to you about that further. I think it's a great idea.
Anytime, Judge.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Let me get through the rest of my day, and I will maybe the rest of the week till a book comes out. Love to talk to you about that in the future.
That'd be great.
It's an important issue. We'll talk to POTUS about it too.
That'd be great.
At some point. Yeah. All right. Well, it was great talking to you guys.
Thank you so much, Judge. Thanks for everything that you do on a constant basis. And I think, bam, you know, put some more garlic in it. Spice it up. You're doing great work.
Thank you. Thank you both. Have a great day.
Thank you, Judge Jeanine.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And everybody should go, Charles, and check out Don't Lie to Me, Judge Jeanine's new book. And we got to thank her for sharing her time with us. You know, I apologize, Charles. I thought the judge would hopefully have gotten my joke, which maybe was not as funny as I thought it was, but you know, Joe Biden, he's, if you were a quartermaster, you can sure in hell take care running a department store thing, you know, where the second floor, the ladies, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, to me, growing up, the son, one of three sons of a nuclear physicist and one of the world's experts on Johann Sebastian Bach, this type of word salad didn't get uttered other than perhaps when my parents have been out late partying. I mean, this is just, you don't say something like this.
It's mental, something's wrong with the guy.
Seriously wrong with him. And he's got, at this stage, delusions and pretensions of grandeur. I mean, to think anybody would take him seriously. I mean, the people, the various Somali warlords are probably saying, we're for Biden. This is great. You know, we're going to take Kenya and Ethiopia and all the ships. We're going to set up a shop here, get AOC to, consult on the energy policy. I mean, it's embarrassing.
I wanted to slip that in when you said you couldn't imagine Joe Biden debating Kim Jong-un. I couldn't imagine Joe Biden debating mini AOC.
Yeah, mini AOC is actually I don't think it's
she
really.
Wiped the floor with him.
It's not even close. But I don't think that can't be a very young person. It's too elegant, too witty.
Maybe but she's like an 8-year-old girl.
A young Jeanine Pirro.
Right. Well, it's too bad that obviously she's very busy, but I wanted to ask her some legal questions. She brought up Cuomo and de Blasio, and my question is, why has there not been legal action taken against these guys? Warren Wilhelm Jr. just announced, this is his plan, $860,000. That's ridiculous. That is literally a drop of water in the ocean. And basically, he's just announced he's taking a week off.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what is that movie scene, where they asked for a ransom of, Dr. Evil asked for a ransom of $1 billion?
No, first he asked for $1 million, and they say, actually, that's not very much money. Our company makes over $2 billion a year. He's like, really? That's excellent. Because he's been frozen or whatever, right. And, inflation. But that's a serious question, Charles. I want to know why no one's taken any legal action. I mean, we've heard from other states that these governors have exceeded their mandates, they're violating the state's constitutions, but no one's doing anything.
Well, I think people are doing things. You know what they're doing is they're looking at this mess, and it's a thing I was taught early in life, and people around who are very successful, who I've grown to know over the years, say one of the most important things you can do is realize when to give up.
Right.
And if you look at a problem and you say, no, I'm going to solve this problem, and you don't understand that it can't be solved, you're going to waste precious time, lots of money,
make it
worse, and make it more expensive, most likely. So, when thinking people look at New York City and understand the following, that a very high number of people resident in New York City and New York State are on New York City and New York State pensions. In some cases, double dipping, a husband and wife, or maybe had two different jobs, and so they're collecting mammoth pensions. We have Columbia and NYU and nonprofit organizations own a lot of real estate in the city.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not paying taxes or at the same rate, if they're paying them at all, in the churches and synagogues and mosques, et cetera. So the tax base is not there. De Blasio and Cuomo, and then the people who might replace these people, who I think are to the left of de Blasio and Cuomo.
What?
You're sitting there, well, Scott Stringer's is a complete moron as the controller.
What about Rudy Giuliani's son?
Well, he's 31 or 2. I mean, I don't know that he'd get across the line. I actually think if Donald Trump wins re-election, which I hope he does actually, I think Donald Trump Jr. would be a kick-ass mayor.
That's a good idea.
He would be hilarious as well. But I mean, he has the personality.
Is he talking about running?
People are putting his name forward and Eric's name forward. But somebody, I think you'd have to be. I've got no prejudice against people who are 30 or 25 or whatever. But when you're talking about taking on corrupt public sector unions, and you're talking about crime, and you're talking about drugs, and you're talking about terrorism, and you're talking this and that, to take a 31-year-old who doesn't really have the life experience yet, unless it's a very unusual person, to soak it all in and come to the job with perspectives that make sense, you run, I think, a massive risk. On top of the nuclear waste dump that is left here, we're then going to have earthquakes and tornadoes and cyclones and tsunamis and whatever. You have nothing left, which might be the objective of Cuomo and de Blasio in the first place, to destroy the nerve center of the globalist financial system. I mean, when I have been around this city, I moved to the city, as told people, I'm not shy about my age. I moved here Memorial Day weekend, 1959, when I was 3 years and 4.5 months old.
Do you remember that?
Absolutely. I have memories before then as well. But in the city, when you're this tall, everything looks really big.
Huge, yeah.
But I would spend a lot of time, age 3 to probably age 13, in Washington Square Park. And in the beginning, it was very, it was a nice neighborhood. And then, come around 67, 68 is when the city started going into the...
Wait a minute. That's Weather Underground time.
Exactly. But into the, as Archie Bunker would say, the Turlet Bowl.
Right.
And there was really a noticeable difference. I mean, I remember, I think I might have been...
Well, they're just doing the same thing again.
Yeah. I might have been 8 or thereabouts, or maybe a little bit older than that. And they're not the playground where we were on Sunday, but across the arch, there's another one. I was in there watching my youngest brother, who's 5 years younger, and thank God I know he was just about to reach for a heroin needle that had been, there were a whole bunch of syringes that had just been thrown into the sandbox for little kids. And it was filthy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was filthy. Times Square was filled with, hookers everywhere, drug addicts.
Kamala Harris wants to legalize prostitution. Did you see that?
Really?
I think she's probably just preemptively, she wants to make sure she doesn't get prosecuted.
I have a lot of experience in thinking about this area. Yeah, thinking about this area. Wheels up Harris.
Wow. The other thing I wanted to ask the judge about is that some of the things that, the topics we were touching on, the concept of questioning how could Fauci or any doctor make this mass diagnosis, they've made rules on social media that questioning the WHO and public health policy is grounds for getting kicked out. You're not allowed to ask questions.
Well, and I noticed, I don't know if you saw that there's a Chinese doctor who escaped from mainland to Hong Kong, then from Hong Kong to, I guess, here. And she was on Tucker last night and saying that she believes, she has credible evidence, that the virus was indeed made in the Wuhan lab, and then goes on to implicate Fauci in knowing how the virus got into the Wuhan lab. And you know, my attitude on science, because I grew up the son of a scientist, is that science is all about asking questions. You don't say,
"What's investigating crimes?"
Well, yeah, that's that. But we'll cover the FBI in a second. But when it comes to science, science is always re-examining bedrock conclusions to say, well, maybe we didn't get 100% of it, because after all, you know, when you think about, I won't go crazy on you here, but when you think about mathematics that ordinary human beings use, we use base 10. We use a specific, narrow approach to figuring out arithmetic. Well, there are many other bases. Base 10 is going to capture some of the relationships, but as you put a finer point on it, you're going to see a different pattern. And so we haven't yet really stress tested the degree to which we might stress test all the orthodox conclusions in science the way they should be, given the increasing power of AI and computer technology. We can go back and look at things where we got to an answer and we didn't have the power. We didn't even have power of any kind. You go all the way back to, you know, the ancient Greeks and before that. So when I hear scientists say that's it, it's settled, and worse,
settled science.
Yeah, when I hear, you know, Gavin Newsom is about as far away from being a scientist as I am from being a bodybuilder, you know, say that it's settled in California and Inslee, it's settled. This is all climate change, and then behind him you have these pictures of the arsonists.
Right.
Arsonists
here.
Yeah,
climate change is increasing arson.
I'm a climate change arsonist.
Jeez.
You know, I mean, it's pathetic.
But Charles, that's one of the things that they're saying is a conservative conspiracy theory, despite the fact that every day there are additional videos. Yesterday I saw a video of a woman held a guy at gunpoint on her farm and called the cops. He just had a book of matches in his hand walking around.
I actually, back in around September 11th, 2001, shortly thereafter, I started thinking about, because I lived in the city, then I moved out to not really remote country, but, you know, the average person had 10 acres and 5 acres or whatever, and some people had more than that, but, you know, relatively remote upstate New York. And when you live for a time in that neck of the woods, you realize that hardly any police regularly go by some of these dirt roads or whatever. So you go down a dirt road like this one, in the middle of wherever that is, and I'm surprised you just used matches. You take a canister of gasoline or a canister of any accelerant or whatever, and you put it on the side, put it on a tree, and the whole place will be up.
Yeah, but then you're implicated the second anybody sees you. If all you have is a book of matches, you can lay down like that and say, oh, I was just smoking cigarettes in the middle of the woods and I don't have any cigarettes.
But I'm just saying to you that there are portions in our vast country that are so remote. You could sit there with a sign, you know, as we do, you see these videos of people going through, what do you call it, customs and bag check, you know, with a box that says bomb on it, you know, and please put your bum through the thing, you know.
Do you have any liquids?
That's right, exactly. Could you take off your shoes, please, and your belt?
No baby milk is allowed on the plane. I think they do let baby milk, but anything else you can't bring on there. It's amazing to me, Judge Jeanine touched on this, how if you listen to the George Stephanopoulos and all these people, I was watching NBC talk about the ABC town hall after it was done, and the audience, did you get a chance to see it?
Not yet.
The audience was quite obviously, packed is the wrong word, because there was only like 4 people there, because they needed 80 feet in between each, and they had the mask on. They made the point of having everybody wear the mask to highlight that Trump wasn't wearing it, but Stephanopoulos wasn't either. And, the questions were ridiculous. One of the women asked President Trump why he refuses to wear a mask. And I want people to be aware of this tactic, because they do it in Congress, they do it on the news, and this woman at the town hall did it. She starts her question with a foregone conclusion that is not substantiated, but she states it as a fact. She says it's been proven that masks can stop or slow the spread of COVID. If I were President Trump, I would have said, excuse me, where has that been proven? Yeah. Where is the proof? What study are you saying? And the woman would have been like, the quartermaster in the ladies' underwear department. He proved it. But they start with that. And then so on ABC, they were saying that Trump said waiters have said that masks don't work. He mentioned waiters in his explanation, but he also said that Fauci said the masks don't work. Well,
he's a wait and see.
They just select what they want to smear with.
Yeah, again, you were onto it right away in the very beginning, pointing out that all of us carries viruses of many types at all times, and it's a question of how your body, how healthy are you, what's your age, what are your other conditions, whether those viruses turn into a condition that could be a real issue for you. And so examining that is not something that you do lightly. It's a doctor-patient exercise, maybe with experts and technicians and stuff like that, and it's certainly not some Travelocity talking gnome with Scarface printing around there telling you this is what the entire world needs to do. 15 days to curb the spread. We've had 6 months to destroy the economy. I mean, and nobody's saying, no, wait a minute, you only paid for 15 days here. Right. Somebody's going to have to pay this 6-month bill or longer. And then you have all of these conflicted people, the bureaucrats saying, oh, absolutely, the school administrators. I mean, you could open up the schools and send your children in to teach, but I'm 55, I'm 60, I'm 65, I'm an administrator, I'm a deputy administrator, whatever, and I don't think it's safe enough for me to come in, so I'm going to call sick days, and I've got a union contract, and you're not going to prosecute me, so we'll just go slow anyway. I mean, in this whole meltdown or scumdemic or whatever you want to call it, the people who barely work, and there are many who barely work, totally game the system in government. They have been up to their usual tricks, barely working.
Right.
I will not precisely explain who this person was that I was talking to today, but a very powerful person in Washington, D.C. has become a friend of mine through the course of the Clinton Foundation investigation. No, it's not John Durham. This person was explaining that everything is, people are just simply not working. They're working from home in D.C. They're home, and this person thought that might continue until the spring of next year.
I think it might continue until 2060.
Till hell freezes over.
Right.
But just to talk about Jeanine and her book and the Clinton Foundation, she was along with Melissa Francis on Fox Business and David Assman, who is also at Fox Business. Jeanine was alone among the primetime hosts in 2015 and 16 who regularly had me on. And she actually did her homework, and she would invite me up to her office, and we would go through evidence with her. She has a small staff, and when I'd show her stuff and make sure that, but she had the courage to put me on there and to go hard against the Clintons on her show.
Yeah.
And I think that made a difference in the election, her work. Mm-hmm. And so I really would urge our viewers to get this latest book, get her other books, if you haven't seen them before. She has a gift for telling complex stories simply and engagingly. She's a very good writer, and this book I had a chance to read it before we went on, and it's quite good. So I would encourage that. And I would encourage, the most encouraging thing that's happened today so far in this broadcast is her comments that she was going to maybe discuss this with the president, because I think she can actually pick up the phone and the president's like, I'd like to talk to Jeanine, actually. I do want to. Mark Meadows, you keep working on that stuff. Jeanine, I'd like to talk to.
I think he should be talking to you, Charles. I mean, that would be absolutely great. And I have to say, I was incredibly, enthusiastic when she took that interest, because she said she was mesmerized, and that was obvious from the moment you started explaining it to her.
Well, she's a wonderful person, and she's been a good ally, and I honestly think the right person to do that is Grinnell, because he has been Senate confirmed twice, or at least once, maybe twice, and he has an interest in continuing to work in government. I was really impressed. I mean, think about what he did in Germany, kick some German ass, and I say that as a the descendant of a German immigrant or Prussian immigrant, so you can't say I'm anti-German.
I liked what he did in terms of yelling at the journalists in the White House.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And, I just like his approach. He's level-headed. He's a deep thinker. He's experienced. He thinks outside the box. And he's not afraid to, look at a problem, call it out for what it is, and then try to solve it. And that's what we need.
Absolutely.
So, Jason, I wanted, if I could, to make a few comments about Joe Biden. And
other than that?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, they're watching in the case of my ex-wife, come down with a serious illness, and then she was given 5 years to live. This person cannot have more than maybe a week left of normal behavior. I mean,
he's well past normal behavior.
Right. And so if he's about to head into, not being able to control his bodily functions, certainly his mind is shot. I mean, it is completely irresponsible for the Democratic Party, for Tom Perez and Keith Ellison and Nancy Pelosi and Donna Brazile and all these people to say, all right, what we're going to do now is make sure that this old white guy pretends that he's actually running for office. I mean, Hillary Clinton, honestly, did a better job in 2016 running for office from Labor Day through September 16th, 2016, than Biden has done. Biden has seen approximately 50 people to 100 people so far. He waved goodbye.
To no one.
To no one.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to know where he is. He's pissing off people on the left for not being left enough. He's pissing on, moderates are leaving in droves, the sheriffs and these type of people.
Well, I think they're voting for Trump, right?
Right, but they're deserting. There was, at one point, really, I would argue it's the blue-collar, union worker, typically first, second, third generation Americans, who were just loyal to the Democratic Party and the so-called Reagan Democrats. And these people, you look at this guy, why do you go through the motion? Does he seriously think that they're going to,
We don't even know if he can see.
Right, and the second piece of the question is we hear that Michael Bloomberg, as we like to call him, Michael Doomberg, is going to give $100 million to this joker for Florida. And they can't even have an audience greet and see Biden off in the tarmac. How tough would it be to go to the SEIU Union Hall and say, hey guys, today I'm going to pay $200 a person to go out and just wave to Joe Biden. That's all you have to do. You don't have to say anything, just wave, And you don't even have to vote for him. But just please, don't make him feel so lonely. It's embarrassing. I think if you and I made a scheduled trip where we said we're going to Tampa, we would have far more of an audience than that. And then you look at his viewership on these YouTube things. You look at what he's saying.
It's terrible.
I mean, it's really, you're not supposed to make fun of people who are mentally challenged. But I think Biden is mentally, and then you imagine putting Biden under the stress that Trump has endured since June 16th, 2015, when he strolled down the escalator. And prior to that, in his business career, Biden will snap. I mean, Biden as vice president never had to do anything. And what he did manage to do is he did manage to enrich Hunter. And who knows how much his brother and sister-in-law and other family members got out of all this, and how much may have leaked back into Joe Biden's pockets. But to me, I'd call this fight. I really would. I mean, this is a point now where you'd say, look, in elementary school and private schools, they have this thing where if one team is a lot stronger than the other team, they don't let the winning team run up the score. And this is, I mean, it'll help perhaps Trump and conservatives if you keep Biden in. There's no enthusiasm for slow-mo Joe. And who is going to bother to show up and vote? The progressives aren't going to vote. Who's going to vote down ticket for slow-mo Joe?
So many people are saying they will, like on Twitter and stuff.
I think that's total crap. I mean, I think if you see, it's not Trump supporters who are showing up at people's house and saying, if you say you're pro-Biden, I'm going to go and burn down your house. I mean, the only people who get attacked are the people who are Trump supporters. So the Trump supporters being quiet, and the other people say, "Oh yeah, I'm for Joe. Of course I'm for Joe." I mean, everyone's for Joe, right?
So, but how are they going to do the debates, Charles? Because honestly, I think that a veal chop could debate Trump more effectively than Joe Biden. At least it would say nothing what he's talking about.
The thing, the quartermaster on the second floor of the ladies' department.
I had to look up what a quartermaster is. I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Right.
And what would a quartermaster be doing in the ladies' department of a department store? It just made no sense.
And are there any department stores left? I mean, all right.
It really strikes me, you know those moments where you're like watching a movie on the couch with somebody and you're like falling asleep and they ask you a question and you answer something that it just makes like no sense. It's like the dialogue from a dream and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And you wake up and you heard yourself say it, you realize it didn't make sense. That's how he's talking all the time.
Right, but he's campaigning. You know, I mean, you're supposed to put your best foot forward, not in your mouth.
Unbelievable.
You know? So I definitely would call it, and who knows what diabolical plans the Democrats may have. I mean, are they thinking they're going to replace Biden with Kamala Harris? Because that'll be an even bigger belly flop.
Right.
I don't think Valerie Jarrett could come in and save the
Well, no,
day.
the reason I wanted to bring up this Valerie Jarrett Twitter account is because, you know, President Trump misspoke. I think he meant herd immunity and he said herd mentality. So she put up this tweet, what is herd mentality? Just asking. And I mean, I don't know if I'll find my response in here, but I responded to her.
There you go.
Yeah. I think Twitter knows it's me looking. You realize your guy can barely utter a single sentence correctly, right?
Did anyone respond?
20 retweet. No, I don't know. I don't get a lot of traction on Twitter ever, but people are, you know, watching Bishop Gator's evaluations of the Jarrett family through history, and he always raises interesting points. But I mean, it's just amazing the pot shots that they're attempting to take at the president when, you know, look, you and I, we do several hours of video programming each week. There's kind of a large amount of recorded statements that we've made more than the average person. There's mistakes that you make. If you
I do?
not you, I'm saying
just kidding.
anybody.
I'm kidding.
If you video record somebody all day, every day, they're going to misspeak here and there. You can't find one coherent sentence that Joe Biden has spoken since like 2014.
Right. Well, it has to be seen in context. You know, you put the blooper file together. There's one where he's in the crowd and he goes, "Oh, I see so-and-so over there. Stand up." The guy's in a wheelchair, paralyzed. You know, "Oh, stand up." You know?
Oh my God.
And then there's some commentary about, you know, put your record player on and do this stuff is just
23 skidoo.
right. Exactly. It's kind of stuff my great grandfather might have said, and he passed away at 103 in 1970.
Well, how did you like it when it came out that the allegation that Joe Biden was the one who suggested charging General Flynn with the Hatch Act?
Logan Act.
The Logan Act. And they said, well, nobody's been charged with that since 1903 or something.
1790.
Right. It feels like yesterday to Joe Biden.
That's right. I was there. I got that act passed. It was supposed to be the Biden Act.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to ask Jeanine this, and maybe another time we'll get to do that. But I have a feeling that Donald Trump, being truly a maestro of managing public opinion, influencing public opinion, has a game plan through November 3rd of, you know, when is the best time to bring up this issue or that issue. And I've noticed a pattern with him. What he'll say in a tweet is something that seems absolutely absurd, like, they spied on my, what do you say, my pipes or my lines or something.
Tapped.
They tapped my lines.
Wiretapped.
Yeah, they
tapped
wiretapped
the wires,
yeah.
something like that.
They tapped my wires. That's what he said back in I think January maybe of 2017. And the Washington.
You can't tap wires. It's like, we know what he's talking about.
Right, exactly. and it turns out that yes, that's exactly what they did. And there was a very interesting reveal. And I wish I put it on my feed, but it's going to be way down there, from somebody in Australia talking about Five Eyes. And it's a very lengthy thread talking about how the Five Eyes had been spying on Trump and others since well before Crossfire Hurricane.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a whistleblower who's come forward in Australia and is providing all sorts of detailed information. It's going to be way back there. You might, we might abandon hope, but
never abandon hope.
okay.
Charles.
maybe a viewer will be able to find it by Googling or something. But it's quite detailed, and I believe the bigger scandal here goes well back, perhaps before September 11th, 2001. When that event happened, obviously it was a disastrous event on many levels, but one of the major negative consequences of it was we embraced the idea, too many of us embraced the idea, if you've done nothing wrong, then what's wrong with letting the government search through your telephone, your email, your this and your that? And there's a lot wrong with it, particularly because so many people like Biden and his son and others will go into government resources and they'll have friends who will pay them off or will pay them to get information that can be gleaned by that internal spying. So we embrace this deep state, the security state, and national security state. And people like Brennan and Comey and the Clintons and the Obamas and others have been feasting off this information, this highly sensitive, actionable information. And that whole arrangement needs to be upended. And I would hope that when Donald Trump makes the repeated statement, as he has made, that Obamagate involves treason, that Obamagate is something we really are going to do something about so that it never happens to another president, and that it's serious. He's been laying the groundwork, setting the table, whatever phrase you want to use, for weeks and months now. We've got to eat the meal, and it's got to be well cooked and tasty and nourishing. So
I'd like dessert as well. But Charles, do you think that the announcement that they're going to subpoena, Brennan and whatever, is that just throwing meat to the lions, or is something going to happen with that?
Well, let's answer that question, not with a question, but by taking people through a new wrinkle on the Clinton Foundation.
Okay.
That if I could do that. So if we go into the annual reports that you actually got, that one. You got the right page. This is a document that was, in theory, submitted to the IRS on the 23rd of December, 1997. Now, it was only on that day, the 23rd of December, 1997, that initial trustees, in theory, were appointed, because it's only on that day that the bylaws were adopted. That's the first day that we see the bylaws being adopted. You can't operate a corporation other than incorporators can fuss around a corporation, but you've got to actually have, according to the Articles of Incorporation, trustees. So the first evidence of any trustees actually being put in here, December 23rd, 1997. This document also goes in December 23rd, 1997. So I ask, who hired James T. Fuller, Esquire at Williams & Connolly? Who made the decision to appoint Williams & Connolly to fill this document out? And how did they get all that done? Appointing the trustees, thinking about this complicated document, having this guy, Skip Rutherford, have the authority to sign this document. The answer is they must have done substantial work before December 23rd, 1997, without actually having trustees and actually being an organization. So this is in my view, a fake application.
Wow.
It was not organized. A lot of this work was done, as I say, before the thing was a valid, organized as a nonprofit corporation. And therefore, Rutherford most likely did not have the authority to hire Williams & Connolly, nor did he actually make the call. As a guess, Williams & Connolly, and specifically David Kendall, were the personal attorneys for the Clinton family. And the Clinton family owed Williams & Connolly millions and millions of dollars, which they could not pay. So here we have an application which is likely unauthorized, and it's for something called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. No other name. You're supposed to...
They got it right there, at least.
Right. It doesn't have an employer identification number, but somehow it has a post office box. You can't get a post office box without an employer identification number.
Or a bank account.
Right. So you look at this as a real team, and I'm sure they're fine forensic investigators at the FBI. And maybe
I'd love to meet those.
Yeah, but if they really went over this, people who would also be looking at the type, what machine made this, was this work done in Washington, D.C., was it done in Little Rock, was it done somewhere else, to really check all this stuff out. If you scroll through this slowly, you see that there's a fair amount of text in here. And this is all typed.
That they typed,
Yeah, and this is all typed, right? So how do they come up with these answers in a single day? There are no typos in here. This is an old-fashioned application. This is not a computer-generated, I don't think.
Oh, they actually typed on
It
the
looks
page?
typed to me.
I'm pretty sure this is a Courier font, because if it were an old school typewriter, I guess it would be an electric one, so they have even pressure. But I don't know, even an electric typewriter is like a relic of the 1980s at this point.
But we just keep going down this stuff. Here are these different people, and we keep going. And it based slowly for a second. Keep going. A little addendum in here, and then technical. It says, I think it's the next page. Yeah. The organization is not a private foundation because it qualifies, and down here, H, as receiving a substantial part of its support in the form of contributions from publicly supported organizations, from a governmental unit, or from the general public. And you see, this is described, you see over here, it says that type of an entity is what's called a Section 509A1 and 170B1A6. And why that is, I'm losing people, I'm sure, who are not into the minutia, but why this is important is that specific type of charity, which the Clinton Foundation claims it is, cannot be controlled by a family or a single individual. It has to be independent. This entity has to be independent from the people running it. People have to stand up in the best interest of the entity. If the lawyers are upset because they might not get paid, because
you can't waive that.
Bill Clinton, and nonetheless, you have to do this in a way where you have to disclose in this application that Bill Clinton has a history of using government property for personal benefit, and will be directing this with Hillary, this foundation, in a manner that could give rise to diversions or thefts of property. If you have to disclose that the Clinton family had many, many secrets that might be exposed if all the presidential records of his presidency were to go into this library, and he has many, many henchmen who might do their level best to bleach, bit, and destroy those documents, which are the property of the people of this country and are public records and cannot be destroyed. If you had to put that kind of language in there, chances are even
might get denied.
Yeah, I mean, like even the Clinton IRS is going to kibosh that thing.
But wait, let me ask you real quick, Charles. It sounds to me, as a layperson, that this rule is there specifically because it would result in theft if a family was controlling the.
Well, that's a good. That's one of the reasons. The real reason it's there, I think, the overarching reason it's there, is that with regard to charities, foundations, there are many types. But the two basic types, the private one, the Gates Foundation. When you give a donation to a Gates Foundation entity, you can only take a deduction back in that day equal to 30% of your, I think, adjusted gross income. During the period when you give the donation. So if you want to give $10 billion to something and your income is only $1 billion, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to take that deduction over a period of years. In this type of a charity, because you're standing in the shoes of government, you're relieving the government of a burden, i.e. that you don't have to put a building up. The Clinton Foundation is going to pay for a portion of the annual upkeep of the building. It's going to staff it, et cetera. The tax laws, this specific provision, allow you to individual donors to take donations up to 50%, so an extra 20% per year. That's a lot of money if you're a rich person, that you get an extra benefit. So you can give money away more quickly.
Ooh, you're causing me to realize not only can you give money away more quickly, but you're creating opportunities for the people who donate to you to save more money, and this is exactly what a crooked charity wants to do.
Right. So they want to hold out to the private individuals that you're going to get this bigger tax deduction, and the IRS says, okay, fine. Then the entity definitely has to be independent from its interests have to be looked at by a truly independent board that's not engaged in business, not engaged in politics. Not going to have Hillary run for Senate and president, not going to have the head of the DNC on its board as the lead independent director through presidential and other election cycles.
And if a board member of a public charity had a private business that was some sort of political consultancy, would that be a conflict of interest?
It could very well be if it were not disclosed properly. And it's all very fact-based, but it could well be. So in this case, the reason I harp on this a little bit is that when you create what's called a public charity, there's this special, not only is there a special set of burdens, but there's special forms you have to fill out because you have to demonstrate that over a recent 5-year period or 4+ year period, that you've achieved a certain percentage of public support. And to do that, you have to elect the first tax year that you want in the calculation. So if we go to the very back of this pack here that went into the IRS, we find a form that I've not dwelt on until today.
Oh.
And because I always want to have something new for people to talk about. You go Form 872C. You ever fill one of them out?
I think definitely not.
What this says, this is an agreement between the foundation and the district director of the Internal Revenue or acting assistant commissioner, and it says that the initial ending date of the first tax year is what?
December 31st, 1997.
So if we go back to this annual report's financials here,
Which?
the one to the right, yeah.
This?
Yep, and then we go down the page a little bit. Stop there. Do we see a 1997 there?
No.
Okay. They did not fill out a form for 1997. Yet, in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, they leave blank any entries for what may have happened in 1997. Yet they claim the first tax year that they want the IRS to count in this calculation of public support is 1997. So they lied about the activities in 1997. Now they're going to say, if they have any brains left, or if they're, even Biden might say, that in 1997 we formed the thing October 23rd. There was de minimis activity in the year, and that's why we just said we didn't need to fill out a form. And then I would counter and say, well, under the Venusian rules of accounting, which you no doubt used as opposed to the American ones, Venusian being Venus.
Oh, the planet, right.
Yeah. You have to, if you had pledges from somebody, which you should have had before you set this thing up. I mean, what Nimrod is going to go out to the world saying, I want to set up, I want to raise money to put a big double wide trailer on a plot of land in North Little Rock, but I'm not going to check and see that I have they claim 165 million, that I have pledges from anybody before I go through this exercise. And what law firm is going to say, oh yeah, you haven't paid your personal bills. Why don't we set up another exercise here where you have no ability to pay us personal bills, and now you want us to orchestrate a fundraising exercise for the $165 million project, and you've got no pledges. Clearly, they had pledges, and they may have been soft pledges or commitments or undertakings, whatever you want to call them. And these undertakings are described in multiple books. By people like McAuliffe claims that he was asked to head up the fundraising.
Is he still the governor of Virginia?
No, he's a felon in waiting. He's gone.
And so what year did they start construction of this? 1997, right?
No, they broke ground on it in 2002. They had a ceremonial groundbreaking, which was just get the equivalent of a rubber chicken shovel, and get some photographers, and we'll dig up a mound of dirt over here. But they didn't.
They're like, oh, whoops, that's John Glasgow. Dig someplace else.
Exactly. So no, they had
apologies to the Glasgow family.
Yeah, they announced that they were going to move into it, and with great fanfare. Then the union said, well, actually, your contract here says that you're going to use non-union labor in a project in a city park, and we don't think that works. And so there was a big fight on that. And they weren't able to actually break ground until, I think, late May, around the 27th.
Why did they want non-union labor? If
cheaper.
Right, I know, but I'm saying there's so much for everybody earning a living wage.
They're for nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're for the Clintons. Wow. But so this is yet another example that the paperwork stank. And when we think about, if we go back to that, where you were before, notice here, this is May 11th, 1998, is when this was faxed by somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, this is 4 days before the tax return was due.
Hang on a second. I'm sorry to interrupt, Charles. I know I do it all the time, but look, fax number is 0. That's unusual. Normally your fax number has your fax number in it so people know where the fax is coming from.
Maybe it's from Washington, D.C., from the president's office. But my point is, these people filled this form in under penalties of perjury. They said they wanted the first tax year to be 1997. That form was due May 15th, 1998. Here you have something faxed to them reminding them about this form, and they probably say, well, we can't reveal the true state of the Clinton Foundation as Ken Starr is completing his report, as we may face impeachment, and if we get impeached and convicted, then I can't pay your bill. So the discussion, to Williams and Connolly and others, the discussion has to be, what the hell was really going on in this time frame? And from memory now, David Pryor's son, Mark Pryor, was running for Attorney General of Arkansas, and I believe won in November of, was it 98? We'll have to look into it. I think he won in November 98, and he was sworn in January, I think. You go down the page and it'll confirm. January 12th, 1999. So the second David Pryor, who's a revered figure in Arkansas then and now, was governor, senator, etc. Second, his son is the Attorney General of Arkansas. You know that Arkansas is not going to prosecute the Clinton Foundation.
Free reign to break the law.
Right. So that's probably the way they gamed it through. They said, look, we're not going to fill in a tax return because Lord help us if Ken Starr and those people start figuring out how we're paying Williams and Connolly.
Wow.
And what we did with our second presidential inaugural fund, which they never accounted for in 1996, kept it, gave some to Vernon, some to Bill, some to Hillary. Chelsea needs a college fund. I'm just making that up. But so when you go back over this timeline, and I'm a huge fan of timelines, because when you have evidence from multiple different directions, you see that Joe Biden's dumbest sibling, if that person had been working at the FBI or had been working for James Comey starting January 7th, 2002, would have been able to go through this record and say, hang on, the Clinton Foundation is not organized. It is not operated lawfully. It's never filed a tax return for 97, a key year. The returns that it has filed are all wrong. The state filings are all wrong. What's Bill Clinton doing talking about operating the Clinton Foundation here in New York, which he claims he started doing in August of 2001, i.e. before Comey took over the assignment, sweeping up after Mary Jo, what's her last name? Mary Jo White, who had been the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
When did Comey become the U.S. Attorney?
January 7th, 2002 was his first day, but he had a briefing in December of 2001. Actually, that's a good thing, Jason. If you could you jump into the William J. Clinton Foundation FBI vault file, please? While I get a quick drink of water.
There it is.
Yeah. So for people who understand how government files look, this is an investigation that supposedly took 4 years.
They get paid by the hour, Charles.
Well, but here's an investigation that took 4 years, right? Now, the Clinton Foundation's complicated. Yeah. This is through the closing of the finishing of the construction. There's a lot of investigating witnesses. All we have here are 3 parts.
Not that much.
Let's look at an investigation that took a year, mid-year exam, which is Hillary R. Clinton. And let's see by comparison how many parts they have.
39.
41, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you get back to the...
If you go to Google...
There it is.
Yeah. So here's an investigation...
Wow, it keeps growing.
Well, because people are putting more in. Here's an investigation that officially began on the 10th of July, 2015. Right? So this is before Hillary has reached her agreement with Mark Elias and Perkins Coie to rig the Democratic primary. It's before Donald Trump has only just started to pound the table as a prospective Republican nominee. And the Clintons, I would guess, when the real history, if it ever gets written, it's going to show the Clintons are just salivating. They want Donald Trump to be the nominee because they figure they're going to destroy him with the October surprise and the womanizing and his financial statements and all that kind of stuff. So here's an investigation that began, according to official accounts. This investigation begins on July 10th, 2015 and finishes July 5th, 2016. And this investigation has 41 parts, whereas the Clinton Foundation investigation lasts for 4 years and has 3 parts. It doesn't take a genius to say that something is wrong. Either there are too many parts in the mid-year exam file, and even then I think we haven't seen the many, many emails that were found on the Abedin, Anthony Weiner laptop computer. Those haven't been released to the public. I would have thought covering 4 years, mind you, this is when the Clinton Foundation is illegally getting involved in HIV/AIDS work around the world, many countries. Think of the correspondence back and forth you should have had. Somebody doing a real job on the Clinton Foundation should have said, all right, they don't say that they have operations in any country until 2004. Yet they have this press release with Bertie Ahern, the Taoiseach in Ireland, the equivalent of the Prime Minister in Ireland, in July of 2003, announcing what is close to a $165 million deal where Ireland's going to give money to the Clinton Presidential Foundation that doesn't have authority to operate anywhere outside of Murky Bottom's portion of Little Rock.
Isn't there some weird tax thing with Ireland as well? Like Apple had some problem with taxes and money going to Ireland.
Well, Ireland is, it's different, I suppose. Of course, this is a tax-exempt entity, but Ireland, yes, is a country that is prepared to be, or was prepared to be, extremely creative
with money
in order to get money into the country. But
one other question, sorry. As we look at this, do you find it strange that some professional, organized, skilled investigator is making notes with a friggin' Sharpie? What is that about?
Mini AOC had an internship.
Ran out of crayons, Charles. The FBI is cutting the budget.
Right. So when you see examples, and there are examples of very fine FBI work, and then you contrast it, and you contrast it to this kind of stuff, you just ask yourself, and we clearly don't know the full story on the Clinton Foundation. We don't know the full story on who said they were going to investigate the Clinton Foundation and who called off the dogs. So you go back to the beginning, you go to 1998, and we don't have handy, I think we did this in 2017, but don't even try to find it. In June of 1998, the city of Little Rock raised money in part to buy land for the presidential park on which the Clinton Foundation was going to be situated. But that offering document, which is called an offering statement for a government entity, that offering statement has as a risk factor the entity that is being formed, the entity that supposedly is going to hold all the Clinton Foundation records is not an organization, will be run by somebody who's prepared to quibble about the meaning of the word is, who's going to have a very expansive intern program all over the world and engage in, and needs to pay off a whole bunch of bills. So he's going to scam a whole bunch of money by monetizing his presidency. I mean, none of that's in there, and nor is the risk factor that, and by the way, we're not going to file a tax return in 1997, and we may not even file them in Arkansas, though we should. Nonetheless, please invest in these bonds that will be used and remain outstanding to this day.
So wait a second. So the city of Little Rock issues bonds to buy the land. Everybody buys those city bonds, and then, because we spoke to Larry Nichols about this, they love issuing bonds. That ADFA thing was all about bonds. Right?
Yeah. Well, and so the way that works, in theory, is that when government entities issue bonds, ordinarily you have a check and balance system so that you actually have to get a real accounting for. But let's think, who were the accountants for the city of Little Rock back then?
The Tiger.
The Tiger, BKD, all in for BKD. So if you're going to issue bonds.
I thought they're not even licensed in Arkansas.
Exactly. And
wow.
Issue bonds, and the express use of the bonds is to, a portion are supposed to buy land that will then be leased to this entity, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, and that entity doesn't lawfully exist and doesn't follow laws and doesn't file tax returns. You have a problem there. And you have a problem that potentially could implicate Stevens Inc., which is a very powerful investment bank and is the entity, the underwriter for these bonds. And so, as a guess, what happened in Arkansas, the mess, it's appropriately named, the portion of Arkansas, of Little Rock, where the double-wide trailer and park currently reside, it used to be called Murky Bottoms. It's a very appropriate, because it's a murky situation.
Like Foggy Bottom.
Murky, as in
but
muddy.
It sounds like
Messy, swampy, etc. It's Swamp Central. And real underwriters who take this kind of stuff seriously, and I have some experience with people like that, don't just say, "Oh, sure, it's for the Clintons, no problem. We're billionaires. We'll get into this. We'll issue these bonds. They're going to be outstanding for 30 years maybe. And if somebody has a problem, we're the deep pocket. We're going to get sued. And if the problem is really due to gross negligence and reckless behavior of the trustees, we're not going to particularly care that those trustees don't have any money, because we're happy to just blow $1 billion.
Nobody says that.
Yeah, nobody says that, except if you're in government and you're giving away somebody else's billion.
Right.
So this is a saga that was a mess in 97. They say that they started this work in October 23rd, 1997. The public record is clear that that is not the case. As in the case of other elements of the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Health Access Initiative, Clinton Global Initiative, Alliance for a Healthier Generation, you name it, a lot of these activities happened before there was an organization, where there were no controls, therefore, and where people could walk up to people close to the Clintons and give them an envelope. The envelope might be a box that has $500,000 in it. As happened, Charlie Tree, walked into the Little Rock office, I think, maybe, of the Democratic Party with a grocery bag, a paper bag filled with money, and said, "I want to give this." I'm not going to do the accent, but I'd like to donate this to the. And even the Democratic National Committee said, "Charlie,
you can't do that.
We didn't order these egg rolls. Forget that."
Well, that guy ran a Chinese restaurant.
I mean,
that just reeks of being a cover for. He's obviously a Chinese spy.
Of course. Yeah.
Bill Clinton's not meeting some dude at a Chinese restaurant and then being like, "Yeah, come to the White House."
But when we think about it, Dinesh D'Souza wrote a great book. He's written several books, but one of the books, I have it somewhere, not in New York City, so I can't put my hands on it, talks about how globalism lifted the incomes of people in India and China more than, in a short period of time, more than any other program in modern history. And why that was global unregulated globalism was advocated by David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger, and then implemented by George H.W. Bush and
that's right,
and everybody else afterwards. And when you look at all that, it's really, again, I'm more of a numbers person than a words person. The chump change that the politicians took for selling we Americans out, selling the jobs out that we should have had from 1989 to the present, that loss is gigantic. And even if Kissinger and the others got $10 billion each, that's nothing compared to the trillions, tens of trillions of dollars that washed out of here. And now the tens of trillions we're going to have to spend bringing our supply chains back into this country. And more importantly, the psychological damage that has been done to the people who, let's say, started work in 1988 or 1989, the people who thought this was a thing, that thought they could trust their leaders, thought that this was sensible. In reality, people were being paid off. Maybe they did or did not get their fair share. Then with the pandemic happens, and now their children are going to suffer emotional problems of an incalculable magnitude. We don't. I remember as a child, and perhaps you were the same way. School, I actually liked school. I look forward.
I was not that way.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, no, I really look forward to going back to school and getting a new set of books and learning new subjects.
I enjoyed my friends and stuff, but I wasn't really academic.
Okay, well, I enjoyed doing that. And then I enjoyed taking time off in the summer, and there was a clear divide in my mind. I would not, I guess now that I think about it, I kind of did like to study. So I remember my first summer reading list, I said, you had to read 3 books, and it was like 150 books, and I read them all in the first month, that kind of thing.
What?
So, but that's me. I just like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of more,
I don't know if I read 3 books the entire time I was in school.
You probably did. But anyway, so the point is that there was a rhythm to life that you know that during the school year you better study, get your homework in, but then in the summers you kick back, and you at least when you're young, and then maybe 12 to 14 to 16 you start working. This latest experience from March 16th, March 22nd forward has taken a whole bunch of kids who thought that they had to work through the whole year. Now they've given them 6 months, 7 months where they're at home or cooped up, and they're going to think, well, this could happen again.
Right.
And so why should I take school so seriously? And they're going to say, well, I never in my mind thought I'd ever get 3 weeks off or 5 weeks off.
Maybe I should be mayor.
Exactly. Right. Do a better job.
Well, you could just take all the time off and call it a furlough.
Exactly. But so it's going to change the way young people think. It's going to change the way people in high school and college and graduate school think. It's going to change the way employers think. It's going to change. I think big companies are waiting not to fire people until after the election. But either way, Biden wins, the firings are going to be epic. If
November surprise?
November 4th, it's going to be, I don't know why I waited until today, but my
You're
workforce
fired.
is 100,000.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lay off 85,000. But even if Trump wins, there are going to be layoffs. And
But why?
well, because we've had an experience now where we're testing Zoom, we're different ways of doing work. People are not going to have to travel as much.
They're now openly doing things on Zoom, which they never wanted to do before.
Right, and people aren't going to feel like they need to take J.P. Morgan as an example, which has a gigantic set of office buildings all over New York City, multiple office buildings. I've got to believe they're going to look at this and say, not only do we not need all these office buildings in New York City, we don't need to be in New York City.
Right, they could just hire people to work from anywhere. Their house costs less, so their salary could be less.
We're just going to uproot the whole footprint, forget the Northeast, and we're going to go. I'm not saying Chase is going to do this, but you're going to see changes are going to happen after November 3rd that were not structurally possible before then, because we had not been through this whole extended period where people work from home, and the employer got to see, well, how productive are these people who are on our salaries working from home? Wait a minute. Not so productive at all, so let's get rid of them all. And on the subject of who's really important, maybe we don't need to have these task forces, and maybe we don't need to hire these consulting firms, so maybe we don't need this, so we don't. It allows you to think very differently about delivering products and services to the market. And so shame on us for letting the talking Travelocity gnome and Scarface do what they have done to us. There should be a terrible price to pay here.
I agree. And I mean, when you were talking about kids, I see little kids coming into this building with their parents and stuff, and they're all muzzled up. I just can't get past this thought that if you're 5 and half a year is spent wearing that mask, it's just going to burn it into your brain that something's wrong with somebody who's not wearing the mask. And there's definitely no study, even if there are clinical trials of like, does this mask stop a virus or not? I don't think anybody's done a study of what happens to a 5-year-old kid when you make them wear a mask every day for a year.
I was wondering why I was still wearing the earphones.
Yeah, but seriously, Charles, they don't have any study on what that's going to do.
Exactly. And this is not the way medicine is supposed to be doled out. All these I don't think anybody believes.
Child abuse.
It is child abuse. I don't think anybody believes that journalists are really mainstream journalists are the gold standard for discerning knowledge and spreading it to the world. The journalistic malpractice that has been in evidence, particularly in the Trump era, where we take at face value this idea of this unnamed whistleblower. How do we know that this whistleblower is actually protected under the statute? I don't think we do. And now the new whistleblower, the DHS whistleblower, thankfully we've quickly figured out supposedly that's just rubbish.
Oh,
And the person is, I mean, the DHS is saying this person has been disciplined in the past for making unfounded allegations, for spying on journalists, and
what?
punished here and there.
Why is he still working there?
I don't know.
They're going to make that guy the boss. It's James Comey Jr.
But one thing on a positive note, I don't know if you get a chance to watch the Kaylee McElhaney World Wrestling Journalist SmackDown sessions that happen
every day.
Today, I mean, she's really that person has a gift. I mean,
She's good.
Because remember, she's not dealing with the bottom of the pack journal. These are supposedly the top White House correspondents, and today she endured all these stupid gotcha questions. The president of the United States said this yesterday, but there's no evidence. Why did he say this and not that? And she took all these different questions, and finally she'd had enough. And she said, I just want to say that I've gone through all these questions now, and not a single one of you has asked a question about the historic Abrahamic Accords. I want to call you out for the double standard. Had Joe Biden and Barack Obama done one of these, she didn't exactly say it this way, it would have been front page news everywhere, on and on and on. And at the end, she closed by saying, and the Nobel Peace Prize Committee has recognized this with so far 2 nominations. Two. One.
What's the second one?
One from somebody in Sweden, and one from somebody we know in Norway. So I do think when we under the Trump era, so much happens, positive and negative. The journalist is a crisis today, crisis of the day, and with Trump, it's accomplishments of the minute. It's easy to misunderestimate the significance of these Abrahamic Accords. These are really, particularly with the UAE, United Arab Emirates, is a country that is a collection of kingdoms, actually, that has tremendous wealth and a relatively small population collectively, and has served as sort of the commercial hub for the Gulf region, with not just people from the Middle East going there and vacationing and working, whatever, but you have a lot of Russians, Eastern Europeans, and others find it a delightful place to be. I've been there several times. I know you've been there. And that they would, with all the money invested and the fact that they're much smaller than Iran, and the Iranians regularly go into United Arab Emirates because it's a hop, skip, and a jump.
The airport in Dubai is like the hub.
Right, but it's also very close to Tehran by air, and then you got the water, the ability to get to the UAE by water, and so the threat posed by terrorism, that they would do this, that Bahrain would do it, and that Donald Trump has hinted, not just hinted, suggested that Saudi Arabia is committed to sign. They haven't formally committed yet, but he indicated, he said, I think, King of Saudi Arabia told him on a phone call that he's inclined to sign. So that's real estate moving things along talk. But
you could hear Al Walid being strung up in the
I
background.
love that's the sound of his nuts being cracked again. What remain of them?
He's been pretty quiet in terms of public stuff, right?
I think so. Phone call for Al Walid Khashoggi. Who?
Al Walid Khashoggi. Is he related to Khashoggi? Oh no. Huh. Yeah, it's amazing how
what's really amazing to me is somebody who studied in college Africa, Middle Eastern economics and politics, and traveled as a college student around, not the Gulf because you couldn't back then, but Egypt. I lived in Egypt for a couple months.
You couldn't even go to?
Not without a sponsor. It was very difficult, and certainly not as a student.
Huh.
When I went to Saudi Arabia the first and second time, you even then in 1993, you had to have a financial sponsor.
Wow.
And also a good conduct sponsor. And mine was Prince Al Walid. And so when I went through customs, they look at my passport like, and then I come the second time and it's the king, and they look at, it wasn't himself, but it was,
And so what did these customs guys say?
They hopped to it. I went right through customs.
Right.
No problem.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah, exactly. But all of the experts in the region said, for example, that when Trump moved our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that Middle East peace would never happen. And I think it's exactly the reverse. I think Jared Kushner understood this, and Trump certainly understood it, that people in the region respect strength and purpose. And they look at the United States and say, well, you got the United States claiming to be the number one superpower, kowtowing to the Palestinians who are in the business of stealing aid money. They have legitimate grievances, but people have been supporting this for decades. Where's all the money? What have they done with it? And why are all the leaders and former leaders so rich with Swiss bank accounts? So the decision to just say enough of this, we're not falling for this crap, that we can't have Middle East peace until there's a Palestinian state, we'll broker the peace, we'll work on the state, and we'll let the folks in the Middle East, the Gulf regions for starters, and then the people of Iran soon after the election, if Trump wins, get a taste of what happens when economies really engage and trade flourishes and people start availing themselves of the precious fruits that are available to human beings as we live out our lives. And you're going to see, I think, with luck, I mean, we may have a terrorist incident here or there, we probably certainly will have them, but as these economies get to know one another, these peoples get to know one another, I think you're going to see a real boom across the Middle East. And that is a boom in which there's no communist party across the Middle East stealing, or People's Liberation Army outside of Iran stealing the fruits of all this labor and wealth creation. So you're going to see a lot of, maybe not immediate, but you're going to see a lot of turbocharged economic activity, and more people are going to sign on to this, I think.
Charles, not to move us too far off the center point, but U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, he loves to talk about space. When you ask him about Serco, he doesn't want to talk about that. But the reason I brought this up is because I'm a little confused. This Falcon Eye, which is basically like the NSA of UAE, this was made by Israel. So obviously they've been doing some stuff with them before. What about that?
I know it says it switched from Vega to Soyuz. Isn't
well,
Soyuz?
They're launching Falcon Eye 2 satellite. I just Googled Falcon Eye because I know that Israel created this Falcon Eye surveillance system, and it is a pretty heavy surveillance state over there. What do you think about that?
I don't really have a point of view on it. I think we're going to... I do think what I would say is that the meeting of Benjamin Netanyahu with, I guess, the foreign minister of Bahrain, and I don't know who from UAE in the signing ceremony, was unusual. I mean, in the case of Egypt and Jordan, both Egypt and Jordan are poor countries. So here's a rich country that has two rich countries that have made the decision, you know what? We're not fighting the feeling anymore. We're sick of being sucker punched by the Palestinian aid bureaucracy. We're sick of being held to ransom. We're going to forge a peace that's in the interest of the region. We're going to be leading this charge. We're going to take the slings and arrows. And remember that Palestinians, when I would go across the Middle East, they would say many of the chief financial officers and legal people across the Gulf states, the rich states, are Palestinian. Palestinians include uneducated people, but there are many highly educated people, and they often joke that they are the Jews of the Arab world, in that because they're the doctors, they're the lawyers, they're the accountants, they're the smart people. And so many inside of Bahrain, inside of Saudi Arabia, inside of whatever, you have a lot of powerful people who've now left the territory where they were from, where it's now called Israel, or wherever they were, Jordan. They've been stuck into Kuwait. They made their money. I sat next to, at a fancy dinner in Saudi Arabia, this guy who was a Palestinian guy. His name is Omar Agad. I don't know if he's still around, Aggad. And this is in Riyadh. It's a house so big that, and he immediately served us. I sat next to the, over here, I guess, was the chairman, the equivalent of the Federal Reserve Bank or the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia. And this was some big royal guy, and President Bush's brother and other people. And we had alcoholic drinks in this guy's house, all of the people, including the Muslims. And then before we start dinner, I'd like to show you my private zoo. So we go out in the back of his house. Here's my tiger, and here's my lion, and here are my elephants, and here's my this, and here's my that.
It'd be funny if one of them ate him.
This guy got really drunk, though. It's pretty...
Wow, I'm surprised. When we were in Dubai, some of the, I paid the hotel bill at the end. Well, anyway, we got in trouble because some members of the crew were buying drinks at the hotel, and the client was like, we can't have this on the hotel bill. So I had to pay for all that and then submit the bill.
Yeah.
But I guess she's not the king of anything. She was just the client.
Well, yeah, in Riyadh, there's no alcohol.
You can only get it at hotels.
Even when I was there in the 90s, you could get non-alcoholic beer, but there was no alcohol. Now, but in this guy's house, it's a different story. In the zoo, you go into the zoo, the gin mill, whatever.
Huh. Interesting. Well, because also in the Mall of Dubai, they had this kind of piqued my interest because it was what's the name of it? Katsuya, which is like a well-known Japanese restaurant that I used to go to when I lived in LA. And there was a Katsuya. This piqued my interest. Katsuya in the mall in Dubai, and then Katsuya at the SLS Hotel in Las Vegas that I think is owned by some Emirati person. So I don't know what the deal is with Katsuya, but point of the story is you could not buy Sapporo beer at that Katsuya.
Really? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't been I've been actually in the middle. I've been on Emirates. In fact, my last flight from India, I went from Bangalore, from New Delhi actually, through Dubai, then nonstop to New York, first class, and it was really quite an experience.
I'm sure. And, I meant to tell you, Charles, or maybe I did already tell you, but there's going to be more ongoing economic fallout from the coronavirus crisis that people can't even really anticipate yet. Like I saw a thing talking about Lufthansa is discontinuing the use of Airbus 380s and Boeing 747s.
And in a newsflash, they've hired AOC as their consultant. They're going to start sending everybody by train.
Well, but the point is, this is going to affect, in other words, Emirates is the largest owner of Airbus 380s, and because of a lot of complicated things that we don't need to go into right now, the Airbus 380 never really achieved the purpose it was intended for, and now the problem is Airbus can't really financially justify keeping them going. And so Emirates has all these planes that are sort of like old news, and it's when they discontinue something like that, it starts to be the end of availability for parts and service. And
this is where we get into whole supply and demand. So you take supply of aircrafts or seat miles out, and prices go up, and that further craters the economy. So, yeah.
Maybe people could purchase A380s and convert them into low-cost homes.
Exactly. Park them park one right next to de Blasio's townhouse.
I was going to say,
like right in front.
They don't take up too much space.
No.
So that's good news. Yeah. Well, Charles, it's been a really exciting show. Very pleased to have Judge Jeanine with us.
She's wonderful.
She is, and I really she's so busy though, it's hard to, get enough of her time. I wanted to ask her some questions about Cuomo and de Blasio. Because, so Louis Leo, the lawyer in Palm Beach, they're having a lot of resistance to this mask mandate lawsuit. And it's a problem. I mean, we've got governors that are defying the Constitution, federal judges that just don't care about that.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump has had many successes, but one failure that is going to need to be addressed in his biography, if he ever writes one, is his failure to push back hard on Fauci, on the model, and on Birx. Because had we waited a little bit longer, I think he was shown
For what?
to really stress test Neil Ferguson's model, which turned out to be horribly wrong.
Right.
And you get to a place, it's kind of like the Clinton Foundation. It's all wrong from the start. Who's going to tell the biggest political donor in Arkansas that we fucked up? Yeah. And it's like, I don't think I'm gonna, I'd like a donation from him. Okay. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, And similarly with this pandemic, jumping in, signing off on, it's not the first time, for example, that we've listened to Brits who, for example, Sir Dearlove, Richard Dearlove?
Oh, yeah.
With the weapons of mass destruction.
Was that him who?
Absolutely. That's
wow,
him.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
And here's this guy, Neil Ferguson. Thanks, Obama. Thanks, Ferguson. And I'm sure he goes off quietly into the night after he explains to his wife about the mistress and all that kind of stuff.
But, you know, they talk about, oh, Trump's not listening to the intelligence agencies. It's like, look, we've only had a small sampling of people who have claimed to be from intelligence agencies, but they're all idiots. I mean, I don't blame Trump for not listening to them.
Well, again, it's not the role of a manager to just hire outside experts or employ experts to tell that manager what to do, notwithstanding 8 years of the Obama presidency. I mean, you are supposed to bring to the table that special extra perspective that allows you to sift through differing opinions and think through what's sensible, what's not sensible, what's practical, what's the most practical, what can I get done quickly, how do I motivate the team, how do I move my government along, and then how do I make sure that I don't scare the living shit out of the country the way the media is doing.
Well, and not only that, when you watch the Snuffleupagus press conference or town hall or whatever it was, it's just, everything is like, oh, coronavirus is Trump's fault, 200,000 people dead because of Donald Trump. It's like, wait a minute, how is that?
Well, I see. I mean, when I used to go to McDonald's and stay there to have a few coffees, you'd hear these people. One would be out doing the other with some fantastical tale of abuse that he'd seen involving Donald Trump or this person or that person. Did you know that Donald Trump wakes up every morning and orders up a baby, slaps the baby in the head, and then drinks Diet Coke? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Diet Coke? That's horrible.
And you know, these people whip themselves into it. It's really a psychological experience.
That's called a filet-o-fish story. And Charles, with that, I think we pretty much covered it for today. You know, I've mentioned this a few times, but because of the ongoing, really remarkably persistent attacks against Crowdsource the Truth, and I'm not going to necessarily go into the details of what they entail, but they are picking up. People can now watch the daily YouTube live streams on crowdsourcethetruth.com. You can see we're going live on there right now. I always love this video version of the cream of wheat box. But the other thing that you're going to be able to access here on crowdsourcethetruth.com is the newest sponsorship opportunity, which is this Counter Lawfare Fund. This is basically an opportunity for people to choose to sponsor the channel either for $100 or $1,000 or $5,000. And again, this is an opportunity I'm suggesting only for people who consider $5,000 a totally disposable amount of income. I never want anyone to sponsor the channel for any amount of money that would be a burden to them. But the benefit to people who are wanting to do this is that for $100, you're going to get an annual subscription to the sponsor-exclusive content. There are a number of free gifts included, and when you look at it on a per-month basis, if you're sponsoring for $5 to $10 a month, it's actually a very good value for people. And it's going to help Crowdsource the Truth continue to fight no specific lawsuit. This is not funding a lawsuit. This is a sponsorship opportunity that will help Crowdsource the Truth sustain. And one of the things I hope to achieve with this total effort is to expose this practice of lawfare wherever it's happening and whoever it's happening to. So I'm very thankful to the people who have sponsored the channel for that. And a lot of people have been asking, can they sponsor the channel for less than $100? People can always use paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth, and people can choose any amount at all. I really want to thank the generous sponsors that make the show possible. And Charles, you see it firsthand. There's a lot of subtle upgrades that are going on that people might not quite notice, but it sounds really good today, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds very good. Yeah. Very well done, Jason.
Thank you. And there'll be more changes coming soon. So I want to thank everybody for watching. And if the weather holds out, we'll be on another journey throughout this sadly deteriorating city on Sunday. But the mayor will be on vacation, so...
Well, we got to get those All Lives Matter face masks printed up.
They better be made of steel because we're going to get punched right in the face. But anyway, Charles, I'll see you on Sunday, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.